First goal of the game, if I'm not mistaken, was off of a one face-off, right?
Yeah. We should introduce the video real quick.
We should, yeah.
6 goals that I had versus Hilbert College.
You can tell that's like this is like the epitome of like what it looks like when someone has the hot hand. Or like, I mean, that second one where you S-dodge around that defender and then go underhand from like 18 yards. That was
Yeah.
that's solely a confidence goal more so than a skill and X's and O's type goal. At least from from a spectator point of view.
Yeah, no, that was, I don't know. It was just weird. I guess I was winding up for a shot, but I thought I had more space, and then I saw the defender slide in my face pretty quickly. And I was just like, well, I guess I got to let this go and either miss or hit the cage, and it went in. And the funniest thing about that is, as I was going through my follow through, I like looked away from the goal, and I just heard people cheering. I was like, oh, I didn't even know that went in.
Just kind of following through and ending up in that back pedal. That's just like if you could put pictures in a book of like how to shoot on the run, it would look exactly like that.
Yeah, and I guess really quick back to that first goal.
Yeah.
I kind of did the swim move.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I didn't want that to go unnoticed. So right now, I'm going to lay this audio over the part where I just spam repeats of this celly in slow motion.
The third goal, which is obviously the hat-trick goal, which is kind of my signature move, I guess, since I got to college, was dodging from the side and then kind of playing the defender from there. And the defender that was guarding me was bigger than I was, honestly.
Yeah.
But I got him to overcommit a little bit. If you look at like 23 seconds, it's like he's just a little bit above me, and he's got his hips completely horizontal to where I am. I just kind of sneak underneath him, roll, and then in between two defenders, it wasn't a hard slide, and just an easy goal from there.
Yeah. So do you? What makes you walk the dog there in one hand with your left on the bottom rather than just roll to your left hand? Like, are you anticipating stepping right out of that roll back to like the center line and getting that shot off right-handed, or is that just kind of how it worked out?
It's having protection from that rat check that defenders like to throw sometimes. And with my left hand low on the stick like that and putting it away from my body, if a defender goes in front of me, I've got my right hand to protect the head of my stick, and I don't have any defenders out in front of me, so I know I'm good there. If he goes a rat check behind me in a home run, I know my arm's strong enough to go to soak a check, and my stick's too far away for him to really be able to get a good shot on it. So doing that just kind of just adds protection and gives me options to either roll away and catch my stick, or roll away or just continue forward and just put two hands on it and then reach around and put it wherever I want it.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of options with it, and I just get a little bit of extra protection, although what I'm sacrificing with that is the ability to make a play in case I'm missing something. If I have a defender sliding to my face out of that roll, I'm screwed. There's nothing I can do.
Yeah, even just hearing you say that, watching this again, I can see if you did have a guy open on the inside. But I think that, do you think in that scenario, if we were to pause the video right there during this audio part, if you did see a guy open in the middle, do you think you would just roll back to your right and just kind of just reattach your top hand and throw that feed real quick, or would you just at that point just give it up and go through X if you had already broken your stride?
I don't know. If I rolled away, got to my right hand, I feel like the defense might have already collapsed in on that middle guy.
Right.
But I mean, obviously, if he's open and there's just no reason not to throw it to him, then yeah. But I mean, if I didn't have that shot and that defender was sliding in my face and I pass it down to Gibbo there, I think it is on the right corner, or near side corner from where I'm dodging, and I mean, he's probably got a goal right there too.
Yeah. Okay. I think the way you're able to get that separation you create from your defender, you can see just before you roll back, like both of his feet are pointing straight upfield, and like he gets completely even with you, and you just like you know that he's not going to be able to make up that space. You created that separation super quickly. That's a really nice goal. This fourth one here, where you catch it on this wing and get under. I mean, it seems just. I mean, that to me just seems the most just like a generic lacrosse goal. But when you look at it, like the way you kind of like get that defender on your back and then step back upfield, that's such a small nuance that I think a lot of young players don't really notice, especially as they watch like higher levels of lacrosse. So like, is that coached, or is that just like sort of a thing that you just started doing because you got stripped or you got stuffed shooting it from GLE as a kid?
Probably a combination of all of them, but I mean, a lot of it's just reading the space that you have out in front of you. Like if you put yourself in my perspective here, also another thing, there's like 1 second left on the shot clock whenever I get this shot off. But so I knew I had to get it off quick. But I have 3, maybe 4 jerseys, depending on how you look at it, right in front of me. But if I take a few steps up, I've got not only more cage to shoot at, but just more space to get my hands free. So if I take a narrow angle towards the face of the goal, I got a number 3, the big defender, coming right at me. If I take a wide angle, I just got more to work with.
Yeah, you kind of stretch that slide. He goes from, because if you would have continued on that path, to your point, he would have slid, and even if you would have gotten that shot past the goal, he would have gotten decked. But he almost completely whiffs on you, even though he's trying to extend into that hit, because you take that extra step upfield, and I think the angle that he plans to meet you at ends up not being the correct angle. But it's too late for him to, because he's sliding, like he's coming off he's running full speed. Yeah, he can't even adjust to that. That's that's definitely a detail that we'll highlight, and we'll repeat that clip a bunch, because that is definitely in like that explanation even. And that's your offhand too. That's your left hand. So would you consider keeping that in your right and pulling that like backhand, or is that just not something that you're comfortable doing?
I have not practiced that enough. If I'm doing that, it's like desperation play. Like I need to just get this ball out of my stick. I've got 3 defenders around me, and I have no other option. Either just put it on goal, maybe it goes in, or put it wide and just get the possession back. But keeping that in my right is a pretty tough situation. Especially, I don't know. I was going to say since there was short time on the clock, but I managed to switch hands, so.
I mean, yeah. So I mean, so yesterday you kind of touched on that. If you want to expand on that a little more, on just reading. At what point do you personally discern when it's just like, all right, I'm in this situation and there's no exit plan, so just shoot the ball, or I'm in this situation, there's no exit plan, so pass it off. Like, is there sort of something that you go by that kind of helps you make that decision in those really quick situations?
Depending on how close I am to the goal, I'm confident enough to be able to hit the goal or a spot even with one hand on my stick if I'm shooting it. But if I'm 10 yards out, I don't think I have enough strength or power in my shot to really get that or be confident with it. So there I would probably pass it out.
Yeah.
But if I'm like 5 yards away from the goal like I was, I mean, may as well let it go. I mean, the worst case scenario, goalie makes a save, or the ball goes wide and we have a chance to get the ball back.
Right.
But I with that goal in particular though, I knew I was close to the goal. I just kind of almost fumbled the ball a little bit and picked it up, and I had to step on my defender, but he managed to get his stick on my left hand and kind of pull it down.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, well, I've got my body lined up just like I want it. I may as well just shoot this. So I went for it and it went in. It was nice.
Right on. How many shots did you take in this game? Would you say? I mean, just ballpark, because I know it was months ago.
I know I was shooting at a pretty good clip. I would say 10 tops.
Right on.
I know I was just hitting the cage. It was feeling nice. Everything was.
A very tough situation to be in for a matchup for a player like yourself, where you're like, do you put the most athletic player on him who's not as big, or do you put a player who is your size? But I mean, even if a defender is as fast as you are and he's your size, that's still, you're still gonna get a step on him just because you're facing the goal and he's not. So like, that is tough. Like, do you put a fast LSM on you, or do you just play a guy up? But I mean,
In my opinion, I just put the most athletic guy on me because I'm not like I have a decent amount of speed, but not like anything stunning or anything. So I mean, athletic LSMs I've always found to be very difficult to beat. He's like, oh, you can play mind games with people in this sport and just beat them clean. You don't even have to do anything.
Yeah, so I think that because you mentioned maybe not being the fastest, although you have a, I mean it's funny, like the speed that you show here is like every step is like in a direction that has like purpose to it. So like even if you're not outrunning a guy, like you're taking a step that is like strategically beating the step that defender is taking. Yeah, so the mental aspect of it, beyond just like, so like there's confidence to dodge to the goal and shoot, and confidence to score and do all those things, but I see some of these, like I think really like the first and second ones for sure, you're just like you have the ball and you're just taking what is in front of you and just like, would you say that? Do you sort of put yourself in a place where once you get the ball you can go right away, or are you getting the ball and then just immediately realizing where his top foot is and where the space is?
Or both. I'd like to think that I'm reading the space in front of me and just being like, all right, well, he's completely taken that away, and it's not worth trying to fight for that because there's already two defenders in that direction that I would have to beat as well.
Right.
He's giving me this space, and there's only one other defender, but there's another offensive player that he's got to worry about. So, and then taking my steps to where I can maximize my angle to shoot, and also keeping my stick in a position where it's confusing the goalie a little bit, which I think if you go to, what time is it, 40 seconds into the clip for the fifth goal, if you watch my stick, I'm kind of like fiddling it up and down as I'm getting ready to shoot. Uh-huh. Watch the goalie as I do that. Watch the goalie, dude. He's freaking out.
Yeah, he doesn't know. He doesn't know where to be. Man, but he it's funny. Like if you watch his base specifically, because it seems like I'm watching that again. It's like you cross, like you're coming down the alley, and his base gets really wide, and then his feet stutter twice, and then his knees go in.
Yeah, he's like bowing his knees in. He just gets like stumped. Like, what do I do here?
Yeah, like he knows that he has to do something, but he doesn't know what. But I think that is especially effective because a goal, like part of the goal. I mean, I'm by no means a goalie expert, but part of the goalie position is being very conservative with the steps that you take and not like wasting steps for no reason. So like the fact that you make each of his feet move 2 or 3 times before you even release the ball, like it's almost like by the time he is deciding to step decisively in a direction, his base is probably nowhere near where he wants it to be to like actually do that with good technique. I did not recognize that at all. I'm just I'm going back to that goal over and over again.
Yeah. No, and like on top of that, it's like, so the goalie, like he moved his legs a bunch, but didn't really move anywhere. And so I'm continuing down that right alley, and then from my angle, there was just so much space to shoot at in the bottom right. The goalie didn't even move, didn't even flinch.
Yeah, he stays like in the center of the. Yeah, you score that on the off stick. Well, I guess like that's that pipe closest to you, but he's nowhere near there. He should be. But yeah, you're right. He steps a bunch, but doesn't really even continue on his arc to where he's supposed to be.
Yeah,
that's cool. So is that something that you see on film and you think like, oh, cool, or is that something that is there intention to that, or is that just kind of how the goalie does because of how you're running down the alley and cradling, or are you do you think you're making that happen intentionally?
In game, I was really just trying to find space and just find an alley to shoot. But upon reflection, whenever this clip first came out, and then even now, just looking at it again, it's kind of like, oh, well, that's something interesting to watch out for. Like, is the goalie stagnant in his steps, or is he following me in a really good line? And then that could help me, in a number of ways, either whether or not I'm going to decide to pull the trigger there or just pop it out. If a really good goalie's just lined up well with me there, maybe I don't take that shot.
Right.
But I remember in the game just looking down and seeing all that space in the bottom right corner. I was like, yeah, obviously I'm going to shoot there. And the goalie didn't even move.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a teaching moment or a learning moment, at least now looking back on it. It's just something else to look out for.
Where did that ball go in on the cage?
Bottom left corner. Goalie punches to the right, takes too many steps to his left, and commits all the way near pipe and doesn't realize that he leaves that far left side wide open. Despite it being in my right hand, my stick in my right hand, I think I don't know how to describe this. If you put yourself in my shoes there and you take my stick in my right hand and you just kind of imagine bringing it, like, the stick out in front of you, in front of your face, and just kind of wrapping it around the goalie, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That's what allowed me to get it from my right hand to the bottom left corner, despite the goalie taking all of that space away.
Right.
Because from his angle, I'm sure it looked like there's just no way he can put it to that far side.
Yeah, yeah.
But just bringing my stick out in front of my body and then releasing it, I increase my angle more. It's kind of like the eyes of your stick thing.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say that you use those words, because one thing I've been talking about in lessons is something John Grant Jr. said in his String King offhand video on YouTube when he was sponsored by String King. But he said he would put himself into a position where the defender on him and the defense and the goalie would think he's probably not going to shoot from there, and then he would shoot from those places. And like it was like, one, it was just very, very, it was funny because that's a very like complicated, like, like, obviously there's more to it than that because he's so good. But like he explained it like it's such a simple thing, like, oh, I just get myself into this impossible situation and then I just shoot it. And it's like, well, I mean, okay. but
I've met him before, and that's so fitting. It's so fitting for him.
It's just like, oh, you just do it this way. It's like, well, I mean, we thought about that, but those things are impossible.
Yeah.
But no, it's funny because you basically just said the exact same words that he said. Do you think, I guess I'll just ask blankly, do you think that you intentionally do certain things because you are a size that allows you to do that? Or do you think that these things just kind of happen because you're the size that you are? Like, do you make a decision to say, I'm going to lean into this defender's stick because I'm 6'2" and he's probably not approached a player my size this way, I don't think he realizes that my size is going to make it more difficult for him to get his stick back or get on my hips or drive me to a place?
That's interesting. I'd like to say it's a combination of both, because I think I go into a dodge thinking like, well, I'm going to use my body. Like, it's not a whole lot of players that are my size or able to handle players my size. But now that you mention it, I think the result of my initiation, whether it be a goal or a turnover or a pass up the alley or down the alley, I feel like that's kind of just like a random result. Like, did I throw my body around the right way? Did I get my steps, or did I take steps in the right areas? Did I get to the space that I needed? I think that's a good question. Definitely, probably a combination of the two, though.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, it would it would make sense. I guess it wouldn't make sense not to. Like, it would not make sense for you to dodge and get shots the way that like Sergio Salcido does. Like, I think as a defender, if I were playing defense with a short stick, I wouldn't approach you the same way I would approach a Sergio Salcido. Like, cause like,
you have to be more conservative with the Sergio because he's just quicker.
yeah, you have to like give a lot of space. Where like, if he's bigger, then like, it's, like if you give space, you just give him a running start, and then that's
it's over from there.
right. Clearly a distinct disadvantage defensively if a bigger person than you is running at you while you're not running.
No, without a doubt. No, and like if you give a big guy no space, like if you're like me, it's pretty difficult to control. Like I'm already kind of like awkward with the way I move, anyways. It's just like I had someone cross-checking me on the sides and then hitting me with a 6-foot-long pole that doesn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna throw me off my game probably, especially if I have zero space to breathe whatsoever.
So you think that that's if you're initiating from like a high wing, like at like the corner of the box, you think that an LSM would have more success just like getting into that phone booth with you and just like
yes,
just kind of making you have to outrun him?
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, if he's more athletic than I am, then there's probably not a chance that I'm getting past him in the first place. I think as a big player, or if there's a big player, you really just need a pretty much athletic guy on him that can hang with him physically, at least somewhat, and just annoy the crap out of him. Maybe you just dislodge the ball.
Yeah, you make him kind of over carry it and hang his stick a little bit or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting, dude. These are all just like things that you just like notice either when watching lacrosse or playing on a team. You just notice like, oh, that guy gets that shot pretty often. But you're never really like, this is like, I feel a pretty unique thing to be able to be like, all right, you did this. What were you thinking at that time? Or like, I see this. What did you see? Because I think another important point to make lastly is that what is seen on film is like not. I think at least there's a pretty big gap between the looks you see on film and the looks you see in like on the field.
Yeah.
Do you think it's like instincts and lacrosse IQ that kind of like fills in the gaps for you? Because like there's some of these situations that like with just your eyes and without instincts, I think that there's some of these looks even that you maybe wouldn't have gotten if you didn't, like you said at the beginning, like calculate and like place your steps and put yourself in a position. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Intuition and lacrosse IQ is just like, I mean, it's crucial. Like just being around the game for a long time can help a lot, or studying the game profusely can change how you perceive the game and how you play. What looks you're looking for, it changes everything. Especially based on what you like to watch more. If you like to watch more of assist type videos, then maybe you're looking for open players more often. If you watch just step down rips, that's what you're going to look for more often.
Yeah.
Any opportunity that you can find. If you watch filthy dangles, maybe you have more onus or whatever word you want to use for balls in game to whip out that little flex you got right there.
Dude, that's something I never can like. What you watch in the game most is gonna look like, okay, that's what's right, so I'm gonna do that. And that kind of like shapes the kind of player you are. That's interesting. Like you can watch other players on film, and then you can kind of like, oh, I like that, so I'll pick that skill and I'll look for that. Do you think it's possible for there to be an incorrect model for that? Like, do you think if a kid, like you mentioned filthy dangles, So if I'm 8 years old and I don't know anything about lacrosse, and I see on YouTube Lyle Thompson highlights that, and that's the first lacrosse video I see, and that's how I get exposed to the game, then like that's gonna be a fair amount of time dropping the ball and getting turnovers and coaches yelling not to go one-handed. So like,
No, I think.
how do you think that? Because obviously you become Lyle Thompson, like you said, by having the fortitude to try that stuff. Like,
Yeah.
like if you miss the shots you don't take, obviously, like when Gretzky said, but you don't become Lyle Thompson and able to like toe drag a Team USA defender unless you like start doing that at like 7th grade or whatever, maybe earlier than that.
It kind of depends on how you hone your craft for your game with everything else in the sport. If you really only focus on like 100% only focus on dangling, then who knows? Probably your passing's probably not the best. Your shooting's probably not the best from anywhere outside of 5 yards. And heck, if you're an attackman in that case, your riding game is probably not very good, and you're maybe not even very athletic. But alternatively, if you're a Lyle Thompson, you're pretty good at everything else, and you can dangle. It just depends on how you hone your craft and what else you spend your time on.
Like if you could learn the kind of player you are, like as a 6th grader, then like imagine how much stuff you wouldn't spend your time on because you don't need to.
Yeah, it's also like, so you said the player that you are, also the player that you want to be, but there's also finding common ground between the two, I think, because if you're a 5'5" player, you're probably not going to be a Matt Rambo pushing through players. You're probably not going to be a Sergio Perkovic stepping down from 15. You might be a Will Manny or something, but you can hone your game to be a unique Will Manny, or maybe a Will Manny with a hint of Sergio Perkovic or something,
Right.
And it's really crafting the game however you want to be. Like, I like to think that I'm just like a big bruiser out in the field and just kind of just pushing around where I want to get, and then just finding a little space and then just getting the shot off. But at the same time, I wish I was the super dangalicious, fancy move, tippy toe, whatever you want to call it. Just I don't know if I'm running out of words here, but like.
No, I get what you're saying.
No, but just being real fancy with the footwork and everything. I've always wanted that, but I'm just a little bit too clumsy with my giant legs and just big body to really realistically be able to do that. But I've had my moments where I shook a dude pretty good because I just got my hips moving in an S, and just really fundamentally was sound in that moment.
Yeah.
It's just kind of whatever you want to be, and then figuring out what you have to do to be that.
Yeah. Or like what you should rely on in the meantime. It's like while you're on the way to being Mr. Dangles.
Oh, that's such a good point.
Have good footwork, because like you can't like starve until the meal comes. Like you gotta get some crumbs as you go. So like I'll establish a shot on the run and some good footwork, and then just in my backyard I'll practice around the world assist passes. Like, but like you gotta have the you gotta sustain yourself as you go. Really, that was just drawing on what you said about the player, like the balance between the player you are and the player you want to be. Because like, I think many young players again focus on the player that they want to be, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so like it takes a kid. I meet like older kids. I won't even put an age to it. Like I see older kids where we're like working on, like footwork basics and shooting basics, and like you see that like obviously they're not doing anything intentionally wrong, but like they just like you can see what is paid close attention to and a lot of that energy goes to the player they want to be, and so like they're really good at like a lot of like kids, like some older kids like have like a really good underhand shot, like a step down underhand shot from like 15. They can burn corners, but like pumping high, finishing low, and putting the ball in a spot on the net is like very difficult for them.
Yeah.
And it's like, which of those things realistically happens more often in a game? Like, definitely that latter one, and not stepping in from 15. Like, you have to get open for that, and like for that you have to have good footwork, and you have to have lacrosse IQ, and that comes from watching film and spending time on the ladder, and you have to have stick skills to catch that ball, and you have to throw enough passes on the wall to build that relationship with your stick to be able to even snap your wrist properly and place that shot and get your hips moving into it, and like choose the correct location on the net based on where the goalie is and based on where you're shooting from, and like all of that stuff has to be there first. All of that stuff is the train tracks, and then like ripping it underhand from 15 is like riding the train, where like you don't just get to do that. Like you have to do all that other stuff, the basics, and then while you're like refining that thing on your own, on like after practice or whatever, that's when you secretly build that skill.
The space between the player you want to be and the player you are, or the player you are and the player you want to be.
That should be the aim of watching the game at all, I think. Like, obviously, eventually, sometimes you just want to watch a game, but like, like I think part of it is realizing like Colin Heacock got that goal because he's this size and he was in this situation and he did it because he's this handedness, and not just seeing like that's a lacrosse goal the same as all the others.
Yeah.
And I think that comes from, like you said, realizing, a type of player, like a type that exists, and then the type that you are right now, and like seeing like the sort of block of clay that you are, and like the molded thing that the type of player is, and like, all right, I got to carve this stuff away, I got to mold this part, I got to whittle this part down or whatever, I got to,
Then I got to put it on this little spinny pallet tray thing and then sculpt it up that way and whatnot.
Yeah, I gotta like apply water to it, and I gotta do this part first, and then I gotta get my hands dirty and inconvenience myself for a long time. But that's that's the only way to get to the. There's only one way to get a pot, and it's by doing that. And like the time you spend being mad that you don't have a pot is the time that you don't spend getting your hands dirty and forming the clay. Like Coach Ashton talked about mental reps, and like
mental reps. That's good.
Yeah, like he really, and I think part of that is just like I think frankly the better you are at lacrosse, the less incentive there is to get mental reps necessarily. Where I think if you like have a lack of skill in some area, and I think that you pay more attention. The mental rep is very important, and obviously at like the highest level, like Pat Spencer is watching film, even though he's good enough, Michael Sowers, like they're good enough to not need to watch film, like, but they are that good because they watch film. This has been a great thing. This is going to be very insightful. I mean, definitely for everyone, but it was good to just be able to just interview someone based on their own body of work. They can learn from a college player while they're still in middle school, and by the time they get to college, they'll be that much further ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just the mental aspect of knowing those things can put you leaps and bounds ahead, so you at least know what you're looking for in your entire journey.
Right. Yeah.
You don't look out in the world and then have no knowledge of what you actually need to look for to move on. And then you're just not going to get quite where you would be if you just knew what to look for and maybe didn't have as much skill.